to the Technology for Good show. This is episode 75. We're rolling through those numbers quite fast. It's impressive, I gotta say.
I know.
It's scary, isn't it? 75? Wow.
I know. What the hell?
Yeah. My name is Tom Raftery, as you can see there in the lower third. I work for a company called Red Monk. I'm an industry analyst. If you want to participate in the show, do send comments to the Tech for Good hashtag we have there. We are monitoring that in real time, so any comments you drop in there, we'll try and include them in the show. My co-host today is Chris. Chris, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Chris Kernan. I'm an SAP mentor and a principal consultant at Bluefin Solutions. So we're one of the top SAP consultancies in the ecosystem. And as always, Tom, thoroughly happy to be here and excited. We've got some good stories today, so thank you for having me.
Not at all. Always a pleasure, Chris. Always a pleasure. You need to turn on your lower third, by the way.
No. I can't. I'm on the iPad. So I don't have access to the lower third. So
okay,
because the iPad is actually, it's a little bit lighter on bandwidth than the laptop. So it is. I think it's probably because the camera resolution's a little lower. So it's just a little easier. So, but I have the stories. I have my homework on my laptop. So I'm not flying blind.
Good. So we'll break into that. Speaking of the stories, and as you know, regular viewers are aware, we always start with a bad news story and then head into better news. And this week is no exception. We have a reasonably bad news story coming out of the lead up to the climate conference in Paris at the end of the year. And it's from Christiana Figueres, who is the UN climate change chief. And she's saying that the world's climate pledges are not enough to avoid dangerous warming. Basically, what she's saying is that, you know, we're doing a reasonably good job of getting all the countries to pledge to lowering their emissions coming into this conference, but the pledges that have been made so far are likely to leave us just shy of 3 degrees warming instead of the 2 degrees warming, which has been the aim. In fact, she says if we go with the pledges that are being made now, we'll end up with 2.7 degrees warming by the end of the century, as opposed to the 2 degrees that we should be going for.
It's interesting because you know, we talked about this just before the call, and you know, the press during the conference and certainly just after the conference were hailing it as a great success. There was very little dissension within the actual delegates as there has been in previous conferences. But as you say, you know, this lady, she knows her onions. You know, when she says it's 2.7, you know, that's what it is. And you know, on the one hand, credit to the governments for actually stopping their pettiness. But now that they've done that, we now need to put pressure on them and say, right, guys, you're now working together and you're working, and we accept that there's a problem. Now we need to go a little further.
Yeah, and I mean, what's great news as well coming into this is the fact that the two holdout governments from OECD countries were Canada and Australia. And we've seen changes at the top in both of those countries. Tony Abbott has been kicked out of the Prime Minister's office in Australia and been replaced by Martin Turnbull, who is at least a bit more, he's not anti-science, shall we say that?
Well, he's a businessman.
Yeah.
You know, he's a businessman. We've seen lots of economic reports coming out saying, this, you know, if we ignore this is going to have a massive economic impact, and also the economics of renewable energy does make sense. So he has, you know, as a businessman, he understands that language. He knows.
He does. He still has to deal with a lot of climate skeptics within his own party, and whether he can win them over and push you know, decent legislation through will remains to be seen. But the other one I said was Canada. We had Justin Trudeau just elected as the Prime Minister, and he seems to be more climate friendly as well. Again, it's early days yet, but at least, you know, it's better to have him in there than not. And it's nice timing coming into the Paris conference. Back to what Christiana Figueres was saying and the 2.7. I think she's probably right. I think we'll probably end up with commitments at around 2.7 at the end of the climate conference, which will be disappointing. But what I think will happen is that there'll be another one of these climate conferences in 5 years' time, and I think then we will start to have seen more issues happen and more governments start to get the thumb out, and I think the pledges will be repledged and brought down to at least 2.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that's the way it'll happen.
I think we have to get there slowly. Well, we it would be better if we could get there fastly, but I think we've just got too many people to drag along with us to get there that way. So we'll have to just go slowly.
Yeah, agreed. But as they make these steps, that people will realize that it's not actually as gut wrenching as people are predicting it to be, and
Correct.
that will make those slowly.
Just lost you there, Chris. I think you went very frozen all of a second. We'll move on, and hopefully you'll rejoin, and hopefully hopefully you're still there, or if not, you can dial back in. Okay, the next story I saw that I thought people would be interested in was this one, talking about solar plus storage. And that's where we're getting the rollout of solar power combined with storage, and a new report showing that one place which hasn't been looked at where this could be actually quite beneficial is in affordable housing complexes. And there's been this study done, which is on the Green Tech Media site. And it talks about how they've gone and done a study on the economics of it. And in Chicago, they were looking at a 6.2-year payback for affordable housing. In District of Columbia, 3.5-year payback time. And in New York City, 14-year payback time. Some of this is down to the kind of subsidies and the pricing of electricity and things like that. But and that's why you've got some of the differentials. But it's this is a market which hadn't been looked into up until now. The affordable housing market, it hadn't really been looked into in any kind of depth. So it's fascinating to see that in this market in particular, there's reasonably quick payback on investments in this. And of course, that means significantly lower energy bills for people in affordable housing.
Yep.
And you're back.
I am, yes. Sorry, I've I've switched over to the laptop. The iPad decided to give up the ghost, which was most upsetting, but it's okay.
But you got your lower third now, so that's good.
Exactly. All is right with the world. All is right with the world again. I just need to catch up with the particular story that we were on. No, I've lost it. So
we're just on the second story, the thinking differently about where to deploy solar plus storage. And
yes,
it's a nice one because they've done a study on different places in the US, and they find that you get payback in 6 years or 3 years or 14 years in New York's case, depending on subsidies and things like that. And it's a market that hadn't been studied in any great detail up until now, the affordable housing market. People were kind of looking at the solar plus storage more for the upper end of the social scale as opposed to the lower end. But in fact, when you start to have affordable housing with large numbers of families in the same place, it's kind of like the idea of community solar, basically, or community microgrids, this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Same idea. And it actually turns out to be very beneficial.
No, absolutely. And the thing about it is with these types of systems, especially with the microgrids, it's if the people actually invest in them, it in itself can actually create its own community. Yeah. So it can, and that then feeds back into the overall well-being of the society. So it does. So it can be a win-win
It can. You get with these systems, you get a lot more resilience as well. So you get fewer issues with power cuts. You also get lower cost energy. So it's a win all around. It really is. Plus, you're cutting down on air pollution, not necessarily at a local level because it could be from a central generation plant, but you are in general cutting down on air pollution just by taking yourself out of that equation.
Absolutely. And one of our later stories actually is related exactly to that. I'm fascinated by this one, but we'll crack on.
We will indeed. The next story is about Morocco, which is nice. There's a couple of it's kind of a theme going on that. So this one out of Morocco talks about how Morocco is building this enormous solar power plant in the desert in Morocco, near the city of Ouarzazate, and they're building it. It's not using photovoltaic panels. It's using these curved mirrors. And these curved mirrors have, and you might just be able to make it out there, they've got this kind of black line running along the middle of them. And that black line, that black line is filled with a molten salt, which has got a massive heat capacitance. And that's heated up by the mirrors, which are tracking mirrors, which track the movement of the sun. And it heats it up to 400 or 500 degrees C. And they then use that molten salt to heat water, generate steam, and because it has a high heat capacitance, it can still keep heating the water even when the sun has gone down. So it can go 18, 20 hours a day. It's a huge plant. It's part one of a 3-phase rollout. The eventual size is going to be in the hundreds of megawatts. They're saying it's going to generate, there it is, 580 megawatts of electricity. It'll power 1 million homes. And what they're hoping to do is to help Morocco become energy independent so that they're not having to import a lot of their energy, which they are having to do at the moment. The solar energy will make up 1/3 of Morocco's renewable energy supply by 2020, so in just 5 years, with wind and hydro taking the same share each. So tremendous stuff.
The interesting thing is those solar concentrators tend to concentrate onto a tower. So that I think there's one or two. There's at least one of them in New Mexico and the United States, if I remember correctly.
There's two of them beside me here in Seville.
Right. Okay. It's unusual to see actually that salt actually the high capacity salt actually in alongside the arrays. So it is.
Well, not really.
It's just I've never seen it done that way. Whenever they talk about the solar concentrators, the one I'm thinking of is the one with the big
towers. The towers,
that's what I think of.
I've got a number of those towers beside me here in Seville. I've got one place in Solocar, which has 3 towers like that. Another place called Torresol, which is 1 large tower, and the one in Solocar, which is the 3 towers. They also have these mirrors as well with the molten salt in the middle of them. In fact, I have a photograph of the banks of these on my Flickr feed that I took back in 2010 when I visited the site, or 29, whenever it was. It's a fascinating setup. It's really interesting. That place in Solocar is kind of a test bed for Abengoa, and they have lots of different types of solar generation there. So it was a fabulous place to visit. We'll keep going, and we're sticking with Africa though, because Google have made this huge investment in renewable energy in the largest wind farm in Africa, and this is a huge wind farm in Kenya, which will be the largest wind farm in Africa when it is completed. It's in a place called Lake Turkana. And it's got, it will have 365 wind turbines. And one of the reasons for putting it along Lake Turkana is because there's a constant wind there. The wind doesn't kind of drop. So the wind blows consistently with speeds of 24 miles an hour, so about 30 kilometers an hour. and they're saying that it's expected to save the country more than $113 million per year in imported fuel costs. So, I mean, tremendous stuff there for Kenya and for Google. We're seeing Google investing a lot in renewables, mostly in the US. This is the first big investment of theirs that I've seen. I could have missed a couple, I suppose, but it's the first big investment of theirs in renewables I've seen outside of the continental US.
It's interesting because you're with the split in Google, right? So Google has obviously split itself into multiple arms, Alphabet and all the rest of it. But is this Google Ventures, or is it Google? Is it Alphabet, or what part of it is? It's unusual for the Washington Post to sort of be a little. I think it's a little slapdash just saying Google.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. And yeah, it's not clear from the article which part of Google it is.
It's not, because I think actually that actually has a large impact in what it's actually in the importance of it in some ways. Because if Google Ventures is doing it, that's a sort of a money play. If it's Google doing it, or their charitable arm or whatever,
Google.org,
Google.org, then it has a different sort of meaning to it, if you know what I mean. I think it has a different intent behind it. So it would be interesting to see which part of Google actually is doing it.
Yeah, their investments in solar in large projects like this have tended to be more commercial than anything else.
Yeah.
So I suspect that will be the same in this case. They've done some investments in individual companies, like their investment in Makani, for example, which were more the Google.org side of things. But in general, it's more commercial.
Yeah, but the thing about it is, how many data centers do they run in Africa? Usually the renewable energy investments are tied to their data center investments to reduce the total cost of ownership of the data center. So, they must have data centers in Africa, but they tend to be in Southern Africa, in South Africa, in the Southern Hemisphere.
Sure, but I mean, Google have been quite different in their strategy around renewables from the likes of Apple and Facebook. Apple and Facebook have similar strategies to each other, but Google's is different. What Google does is it does large power purchase agreements with wind farms that are not necessarily located anywhere near their data centers.
All right, okay.
So they purchase the power, and then they have these renewable energy certificates for having bought that power. And they can then in the US they have Google Energy, which has a license to trade electricity in the wholesale market. So they do that. They trade the energy on the wholesale market. And then they use those renewable energy certificates for to say that they are 100% renewable.
Yeah.
Whereas Facebook and Apple have a different strategy of actually tying in renewables directly to their data centers. They have them on site or very close by. So it's different. And I guess Apple and Facebook have large data centers and very few of them. Google have smaller data centers and very many of them. So that's probably the reasoning why they've got the two different strategies.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, Google's entire thing is based on resilience and redundancy. So it is, the whole Google file system was based on the principle of it's going to fail, which is why they could build commodity hardware. Yeah.
Fair point. We'll plow on. The next story I saw comes from Panasonic, and we've seen things like this before, but generally they've been kind of Kickstarter type scale projects. Whereas it's nice to see a company of Panasonic's size rolling something like this out. And what it is it's a solar panel with a battery and with lights. And it's aimed at the developing world. So it's the idea is that for people who are off grid or who have a hard time getting a reliable grid connection, you buy this and you stick your solar panel on your roof or whatever. You run a wire to the battery and then run wires from the battery to your lights. And you can also, the battery there comes with USB out for charging phones as well.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what size the battery is. It doesn't say in the story. It says you can charge 3 fully depleted smartphones, which doesn't sound like a whole lot in fairness. But then as against that, these are LED lights.
So a phone battery is about, what is it? It's about 32 milliamps or 32,000 milliamps per hour. So it is.
So if we say 2,500 milliamp hours.
Yeah. So that's 6,000 times 10. That's 6 watts. Plus my math is temporarily eluding me at the moment. It's been a very, very long day. So 60 watts plus another 20, so it's 80 watts.
In or about. Yeah.
In or about.
So you'd run a few bits and pieces off it, all right. You wouldn't run a big screen plasma TV off it, for example, but I don't think that's I don't think that's the target market.
No, I don't think that's what they're going for. The interesting thing is what the battery itself is made of. So that's the nickel hydride, which is the previous generation of the lithium ion, but it's a much cheaper battery technology. But the thing about it is it's very, very prone to battery memory and also reduction in the number of charges.
And also it's not as energy dense either as lithium ion. But I mean, we're not looking for energy density in this because size isn't necessarily an issue. And cost is. So, the nickel metal hydride is probably the better choice in this scenario.
I think it is, but the thing that would worry me is actually the charging cycles, because because it's not a massive battery, but you're constantly going to have it charged. And it doesn't like overcharging either. So if you leave the panel out all day, they must have solved the issue. Let's be honest. Solving the issue is just a bypass. Once you put a circuit in the battery, it says once it's charged, even if the solar panel's on, you just bypass the battery and let the current leak. But it's an interesting solution. Lots of people would just go on lithium ion. I think that they've made the right choice. It's cheaper. It'll do exactly what it needs to do, and it'll help an awful lot of people. Yeah.
I'm seeing here on Twitter, Uwe Fetzer is watching, and he's saying Google also says that Google is investing. So it's not just the Washington Post talking about Google investing, but Google themselves are saying that Google is investing. So that's interesting. Moving on, the next story I saw that I thought was interesting was from Apple, and this is a pretty cool one as well. Apple are investing in solar energy in China, and I think this is the first time that Apple has invested in renewables in China. First I've heard. They're building 2 data centers in Europe, one in Ireland and one in Denmark, both of which are fully renewably powered. And Apple have gone out to tender to get the renewables put on site in Ireland, at least, probably in Denmark as well. But no, they've in this case they've gone to make sure that their operations in China are powered with 100% renewable energy. They have 19 offices and 24 stores right now, and they're carbon neutral, thanks to the completion of 40 megawatts of solar capacity in Sichuan. But that's just the start, according to this story, because they say what they're going beyond that is they're going to roll out a total of 2 gigawatts of solar power, which is enormous. And that's being led by 400 megawatts of solar installations by Foxconn. So they're not just doing this for their own facilities, but they're doing it for their supply chain in China as well. That's huge. It's phenomenal that they're doing it for themselves in China. I mean, that is great. But the fact that they're taking not just their supply chain, but also, not just their own facilities, but they're also pushing it down their supply chain and making sure that all their suppliers are also fully renewably powered. That's impressive.
Do you know who actually wins in this more than anybody else? It's the Chinese government. and obviously the world wins and Apple wins, but it really underscores their commitment to to their action in climate change, and Apple is one of their biggest industrial partners.
Yep.
So it's a global brand. It's the largest public company by market capitalization. Apple have such a they're tied to China, especially in terms of their supply chain.
Yeah.
So it's just a win for everybody. But it shows that commitment that the Chinese government are making to the world.
Did you see as well last week, I think it was, that Apple reported the largest corporate profit in a quarter of any company ever?
Yeah. Yeah, it's absolutely nuts. It is absolutely insane.
And in fairness, I have contributed to it. I've contributed to that. But you know what? The next story we're doing is about Fairphone. And that's a fantastic organization, fantastic company. I love what they're doing. I really do.
Yeah.
But having said that, I also love my iPhone, and I think it's a spectacular device. And the fact that Apple are as good with their supply chain as they are makes me feel a lot better about having bought an iPhone, as opposed to, for example, I hear people talking about buying their OnePlus phones, and OnePlus came out with the OnePlus X, I think, during the week.
Yeah.
And there's the OnePlus 2, which has come out a couple of months ago, and all these devices, and the Samsungs and the Huawei's, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Apple is the only one who publish all the details of their supply chain for their devices, and make sure that up until now their facilities have been renewably powered. Their iCloud is fully renewably powered, but now they're pushing it, as I said, already down to their supply chain as well.
Yeah, and there's only there isn't a company, there's only one company in the world that even comes close to having as tight a supply chain as Apple, and that's Dell. Yeah. And they're still some ways off the pace.
They are, but they're doing some pretty interesting stuff as well. I was talking to some of their people a couple of months back, and the kind of things they're doing are fascinating as well. Even things around packaging, and I mean, they have their 20 things for 2020 project going on, and some of those are around things like obviously reduced and making more sustainable packaging. Making it with carbon negative. Making it with carbon negative packaging. Doing things like zero landfill, reducing the power usage of their devices, and there's a whole long list of things. I need to write a blog post on that at some point, because it's fascinating stuff, and they are doing a hell of a lot as well. As you say, themselves and Apple are the two who are really leading that charge. Most of the others seem to have kind of just gone.
It's interesting, because one of the worst people that I think for packaging is Amazon. So it is, you give the size of the box, it can turn up in relation to the size of the actual package. But at the same time, it's all cardboard, it's all paper.
It is.
Very rarely is it polyurethane.
Yeah.
And so from the point of view of the box, things get there, that's all recyclable. So I suppose they're not as bad, but still, it's one of those interesting things. At first glance, it's like Amazon packages are all so big, and but then whenever you look at it, you're like, well, everything there is recyclable.
Yeah, but you have a good point on the size, because the smaller they make the packaging, and the more compact they make the packaging, the more items they can fit in a single truck roll.
True, there is that. But then what Amazon's looking at is they're looking for they're looking at standard sizes to create as much homogeneousness within their packing. Yeah. So
the truck rolls are their logistics partner's problem.
Exactly. It's the same thing that happened with Microsoft. If you remember the Select Agreement CD kits,
oh god,
they
I still
never
have
took,
some of them somewhere.
yeah, but they never took out the localization for the languages. You just got the entire pack
Yeah.
because it would have cost more to have somebody sort the CDs, and they probably would have made more mistakes than it would have cost to ship the entire, all the languages and everything. And that to me was a lesson in sort of supply chain, as to, it seems completely counterintuitive, and it pushes the burden onto the customer.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the business that's doing the shipping ends up winning because it reduced costs.
Yeah, there was a friend of mine, Lorcan Sheehan, was involved in the company that used to do most of the CDs for Microsoft. They were done out of near Kildare.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of the company off the top of my head now, but yeah, this was back in the 90s.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll plow on. I mentioned Fairphone.
Yes.
And what they're doing. They're a fascinating little Dutch company who are making this modular phone. And we've been talking about it for quite a while. And they're shipping in December. They're starting shipping in December for €525. Now that's an unsubsidized price. They might get some of the phone companies to help them out with that. You can see the kind of thing there. You've got a kind of transparent or semi-transparent back, and then you've got the different modules here, and you snap them into place. All the screws are the same size, so you only need one screwdriver to take it apart and put it back together again.
Nice.
And you can see the little blue circles there. The little blue circles show where the screws go. And there's a lot of photographs of it there. It consists of 7 major building blocks: the back cover, the battery, the display assembly, main chassis, receiver module, rear camera module, and speaker module. And this way, they say the components that break most often, like the screen, are isolated for better repairability. You can swap them out. So as better cameras become available, you swap that out.
Yep.
As the battery drops, or the battery starts to fail, you swap one of those in. The new battery is €18. And I assume you'd be able to swap in the motherboard as well as faster ones come on the scene as well. It's a lovely idea. The phone was built and designed by an ODM manufacturer in China, and this is where I start to stop and kind of go, well, okay, but who's making sure that ODM manufacturer in China is doing the right thing by its employees, is not polluting local waterways and things like that. But they have gone and made sure that, or they've at least tried to minimize the use of conflict minerals from places in Africa.
Yeah.
So that's good. I'd like to see more transparency around the Chinese supply chain. But
yeah, they're trying to be ethical. One of their big selling points is it is an ethical company, and they do source their stuff ethically. But the trick is that needs a lot of governance. That needs a lot of governance and a lot of checks. We see the effort that Apple goes to in order to make sure that its supply chain is transparent. For a small outfit like that, that's really tough.
It is, yeah. I mean, if I remember correctly from the last time I looked it up, Apple was doing something like 600 audits of its suppliers per annum.
Yeah.
And these are spot checks. These are not, we'll be down to see you in 2 weeks. It's not like that, we'll be down to see you in 2 weeks. No, it's not that. It's, they turn up unannounced and do audits. And they not alone do they do the audits, they publish what their code is for their suppliers, and they also publish the remediation steps for suppliers who miss those audits, fail the audits. It's really it's a real lesson in transparency. It's fantastic.
It is. Many governments could learn a lot. So they could. Many of them. So the next story, this is one I'm hugely interested in. Yeah,
absolutely. I was thinking the same thing. It's where we're now able to get smartphone sensors that can detect NO2 air pollution. So this comes out of RMIT University's Center for Advanced Electronics and Sensors, and they've come up with a method to equip smartphones with sensors to detect the amount of nitrogen oxide present in air. So, I mean, this is absolutely fantastic. I'd like to see that combined. I mean, this is the old NOx pollution.
Yeah.
I'd like to see similar sensors for SOx, sulfur dioxides, and also the carbon monoxides and dioxides. Yeah. And this is something I speculated about a number of years ago, and I think it will happen. We're starting to see it happen now with the nitrogen oxide. But I suspect we'll start to see this come more and more to the fore, where we get pollution detectors being built into our handsets, and that data being fed back into cloud-based systems for air pollution monitoring.
See, this is where I have a distinct conflict. I can see the point that you're getting at, and I think it's valid. The data privacy issues, I just have a massive issue with. We have these things everywhere within our cities and our towns, and they're called lampposts, and they already have a lot of infrastructure there. We can build the sensors. I would actually prefer to build this stuff into lampposts, where you can actually get a static reading across a much larger area, rather than having people walking about and opening those people up to privacy concerns. Because in order to actually have the sensors, you have to log the data, which means in order to be able, so you have your handset, whenever you report your sensor reading, in order to put that sensor reading into a context of where you've been and where you're going, you have to be identifiable by your handset.
Sure, but the other side of that is you don't have to do it. None of this is going to be compulsory. People do that kind of information already for things like cycling, walking, running. It's not pollution, but it's where they've been when. So I don't see that this is any great stretch beyond that. And like I say, it's not compulsory. You can decide to do it or not. And you can also, for people who have respiratory issues, or maybe who have kids with respiratory issues, you don't have to publish it to the cloud, but as long as you get notifications on your phone as you're walking down the street going, oops, the nitrogen dioxide levels here are particularly high, you might want to consider turning around.
No, I get that, and I agree with that part of it. I do agree with that part of it. I think that if people are going to use it as sort of like the pollen count that we have during the summer and things like that, I think there are better, more infrastructurally sound ways of doing it. But as you say, having at some point we're going to have the ability built into the phone. So let's use it, or let's give people the option of being able to pass that data back into the forecasting systems. Yeah. Fair enough. I do think that it's an area that could be used. I'll tell you a really good scenario that's actually has actually become very, very prevalent. It's actually the use of wearables in divorce cases. Seriously. I've been reading over the last number of months that divorce lawyers have actually subpoenaed your Charge HR or your Apple Watch has your GPS location and your heart rate and all the rest.
The Charge HR has
it doesn't have
GPS. But it does heart rate, yeah.
So what actually happens is the divorce attorneys actually end up subpoenaing your health records for that. So obviously, this is a family show, but there are certain things. You know where I'm going with this.
If I was going jogging at 2 a.m. in the morning.
Yes, that may be a red flag for some people. Similarly, where your actual location is. So if I'm ringing Lauren and say I'm working and oddly enough I'm not at work based on the GPS location of my wearable, then that's another red flag. So divorce attorneys have actually started to do this already. So
Wow, it's a good thing that the Charge HR doesn't have an alcohol center built into it.
Jesus, last week, good God, I tell you, that was a rough, that was a tough week. It was a thoroughly enjoyable week in Las Vegas, but and that was a hard week. Yeah. But anyway, let's crack on.
You survived it manfully. Well done.
I did, yes, I did.
So the next story is a fantastic story. It stays with the mobile team that we've been going with, and this is an interesting project which is still at a very early stage. But what they're doing is they're asking people to donate used handsets. So your old mobile that you got, thrown away in a drawer somewhere that you haven't used, donate it to these guys, and they weatherproof it and surround it with solar cells, and they tie it to trees in the rainforest. So the solar cells make sure that it never turns off. It's constantly on. They reflash it with their own software as well. And so it's constantly on, it's never turned off, and it's constantly listening. And when it hears the sounds of chainsaws from illegal loggers, it rings home and goes, "Oi, there's illegal loggers around here." And then then whoever is in charge of maintaining the forest in that area can, because it's GPS stamped, they can rush to the area, find the illegal loggers, and shut them down before they do any damage, or before they do a significant amount of damage.
And they could probably actually triangulate, because multiple phones would hear the same.
Yeah, and they say the phones have a 1 square mile radius that they can cover.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It's a beautiful idea. It's a really cool idea, and they've rolled it out. There's a little video of it there. They've rolled it out in one particular place in Southeast Asia, and it's worked well there. So they're looking to get more phones and try it in more places. The name of the organization is Rainforest Connection, and they have a website at rfcx.org. So when you go to that website and go to their donate your old phone, you're given a postal address to post it to in the US.
Yeah.
So they're obviously very early stage yet, and they'll probably come up with better ways of taking in phones and things like that. But to me, this is a tremendous idea.
Yeah, that is awesome. Very, very nice. Very nice indeed.
Best ideas are often the simplest, eh?
Absolutely. But the fact they're putting new software on it. They're repurposing the phone, the solar cells, and all the rest of it. It's taking a lot of interesting ideas from lots of different areas and applying them in such a simple way.
Yeah.
That it works really, really well.
Yeah.
So it does. So
the next story is a Kickstarter story. So this is in the realms of, we hope it'll come to be, but it may not do. It's a drone, and we featured drones on the show before, but it's a drone with a little bit of a difference. It's a drone into which you slip in your mobile phone. So your mobile phone becomes the brain of the drone, the power source of the drone, and the camera of the drone.
Yep.
So it's a very nifty little idea. They've looked for 100,000. That's their Kickstarter goal. They've 31 days to go, and they've already almost doubled that. In fact, if I refresh the screen, it'll probably have gone over the doubling it. So it hasn't. No. Okay, it's still at 198. But you can get one of these drones for 195 has gone $235, and you get the drone, into which, as you see there, you slip your phone. There's a neoprene sleeve which protects your phone.
Yeah.
It can take a phone with a waterproof case if you're going to be going over water and you're concerned about it landing on the water. It has an app, obviously, and you on the app you sketch out where you want the drone to go and what height it goes to, so you can do a full path for it. You can also, if you have an Apple Watch, you can twin it with the Apple Watch.
Yes, I've seen that.
It'll follow the watch around, which is pretty cute as an idea. So it's a very nice little idea. A lot of the big drones, you're talking at least $1,000. This is one because they don't have to install the brains or the cameras. You're getting it for $235.
The thing about it is that you can put it. It doesn't have to be your iPhone or your thing. If you read down, it says it can actually take a low-powered smartphone. You can't do any fancy, any real fancy flying with it but you would be able to do something pretty simple with it. But we keep coming back to this, and this is one of these things that I think works really, really well in disaster relief and things like that.
Yes, yeah, and they're talking about being able to buy a swarm of 10 of them for $1,600, which is tremendous.
You look at the earthquake in Afghanistan and things like that there, and the earthquake in Haiti and those things. The being able to get reliable information to the right people is absolutely critical, and having the ability to take a top-down view, a topological view, actually helps so much. One, because it's not restricted by the damage done at the infrastructure layer, but also the ability just to get a wider view. And drones like this here are just absolutely phenomenal at doing this type of stuff. Yeah, no, it's tremendous. And we're only starting to kind of scratch at the surface of the utility we'll be getting from drones. It's excuse me. We've a long way to go with that yet in terms of what we'll be doing with them. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's not just about delivering packages. So it isn't.
No, although we've seen in the last week, Walmart apply for an FAA exemption on use of drones, and it's and they've all kinds of use cases, even things like using it within their own facilities for inventory management, not just for and for moving stuff within stores, not just delivery to the home. They're also looking at it for pickup from sidewalks and things like that. So they've got all kinds of use cases themselves. So,
well, moving in 3 dimensions. It's that's the dream. So it is. Yeah, that's why we still all want hover cars and things like that there. So we can have more traffic jams. Yay!
And moving in 3 dimensions, we have this story. Nice segue. Thank you very much. Set me up beautifully, as always.
Always.
Google are rolling out, and we've talked about this before, their Project Loon, their balloon-powered internet. They're rolling them out. At this point, they're rolling them out over an entire country, over the country of Indonesia. Yes. And Indonesia has 100 million people. I think there's more actually, but they're talking about 100 million people. It has hundreds of islands.
Yes, and
thousands. Yeah, a bit like the Philippines.
Yeah.
So large population, very widely dispersed. A lot of whom have absolutely no internet access whatsoever because they're so remote. So what Google is planning on doing is making sure that they get internet access from their balloons, which will be 20 kilometers up in the air. And the internet access will be LTE speed, which is, significant.
That's 40 meg, or it's between 20 and 40 meg.
It's better than the old dial-up we had back in the day,
Gotcha.
So now it's going to be shared. It's not going to be. I don't know how much is going to be shared, but it's not going to be. Not everyone will be able to get full LTE. I'm guessing, but still, it's better than the situation there now. So they're going to cover the whole country, which is tremendous because it's a large country as well, with balloons, and give them all access. The 3 telcos in Indonesia have signed up to do it with them. So it's
you see that's interesting. We talked about this before, and Google tends to come in fairly heavy-handed. They tried that with Google Pay and were
Yeah.
kicked out the door. And now Apple Pay is, the dominant platform, and Google's playing catch up. I think, if the three telcos are on board with that, then it lends, I think it lends a lot of validity to the project.
Yeah.
So it does. It shows a respect for the indigenous industries and things like that. Like at 17,000 islands, that's a massive massive challenge to overcome.
Yeah.
So it is. Many of the G8 governments would even they would struggle with that type of stuff.
Yeah, and there's no way you're going to roll out wired infrastructure to 17,000 islands. It's just not.
No. Exactly. So it's a thoroughly worthwhile adventure,
And it brings hundreds of millions of more people online that haven't been online to date.
Yeah, great. More cat videos. That's just what we need.
Oh, you cynic! You cynic! I saw this story as well, and it's loosely related. So,
good God, I am on fire today. Cat videos and GIFs, and now we're doing better portable graphics. Sorry, Tom, go on ahead there.
No, it's fine. It's perfect. It's perfect. Thank you again. So this is a story about this BPG standard, which they're hoping will replace GIFs and JPEGs. And the idea is that this BPG standard for files, for videos, well, not videos per se, but GIFs and JPEGs, is a lot smaller, slightly better, a lot smaller in terms of file size, slightly better in terms of clarity. So the two videos that we're looking at here are the same video.
Yeah.
No sound in either of them, but the top one is an MP4 video, 25 frames per second, and it's 927K in file size. The bottom one is BPG, it's 25 frames per second as well, but it's only 518K in size. So it's a lot smaller. They said in the article that they did it as an MP4. They didn't do it as a GIF or a GIF. Because the GIF file size would have been 30 meg. So it's the clarity of it is fantastic. The animation support is spectacular. The file size is very small. There's a couple of downsides. It takes a bit of while. It takes a little longer to decompile because it's not native in browsers, but making it native in browsers would get rid of that pretty quickly.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I said it's related is when I posted about this on Facebook, I had a guy come on to my post on Facebook and go, "Yeah, Tom, I don't see it taking off because no one gives a crap whether the file they upload is 30 meg or 1 meg, because and I was saying, yeah, maybe in the first world, Jeff, but in the developing world, and the story we just talked about with Indonesia." It makes a big difference there when they're just getting connected, and it's going to be a shared LTE connection. If they got to pay for that data as well, then they're very much caring about this.
Absolutely.
So I think this is tremendous. I would love to see this BPG standard take off more. It'll be very hard to displace JPEG. I mean, my camera here, it's got built-in JPEG. I take photographs on it, and it spits out the photographs in both RAW and JPEG format.
But is it aimed at that market? This is the thing. Is it not aimed more at the mobile end of the market and not the actual digital SLR?
Yeah, it is, and it's aimed at websites and website makers as well.
I think it's one of those things. If you look at the rise of Periscope and those types of platforms or capabilities, I think it fits really, really nicely in that area. So it does really nicely. If it was Periscope, if they were using BPG as their back end format, for recording and things like that, it would you could see a lot of benefit in that.
You could, but the huge disadvantage then is you lose audio because BPG won't store audio.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So it won't displace MP4, but it could displace GIFs and JPEGs.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So we'll move on. The next two stories are Facebook stories. So the first one talks about Facebook wanting to replace your phone number with its messages app, basically. So allowing allowing anyone to contact you using the Messenger app. And the second story is where they're using their notifications tab on your mobile, and they're enriching it. I tend to use the notifications tab on my mobile a lot. The Facebook notifications tab a lot to see, who has left a comment or whatever on my latest post on Facebook. And what they're going to drop into that tab is things like see what movies are on in your local theater, things that happened in the past, and friends, milestones, birthdays, life events, sports scores, TV reminders based on pages you've liked, upcoming events you've joined, things happening around your community, weather updates, movies playing in theaters near you, as I said already, and lists of nearby places to eat with links to places, Facebook pages, and reviews. So some useful stuff there.
I really like that idea. I mean, I hugely like that idea because your timeline's polluted.
Yeah.
There's no two ways about it. Your timeline is polluted. So it can be quite difficult to get value out of it, especially if you don't spend a lot of time on Facebook curating that.
I do. For that reason, I do. I curate my Facebook feed a lot because for exactly that reason, because otherwise it would be massively polluted. And I use Facebook now as my main way of harvesting information. Twitter is dead to me.
No, absolutely. But my initial reaction to the first story was, why would I want to, why do I want to give up my phone number? And then you turn it on its head and you realize, well, why am I so wedded to a phone number? It's not, it's not an identity as such, although a lot of places use it as an identifier. But
I'm a little hesitant about it because it has you yielding your identity to Facebook.
It does, and for that reason, I'm still. But I did stop my initial reaction and say, well, hold on, why am I so wedded to the idea of a phone number? But when it comes down to it, I would be handing my identity to Facebook the identity of my handset to Facebook, and that's not something I would want to do.
And phone numbers are portable.
Yeah,
Facebook identity is not.
No, I can't imagine the EU having a lot of success and telling Facebook, this person wants to move to another social network, so you have to make that easier for them. And that's going to go down like a fart in a spacesuit. But whereas the EU did a phenomenal job in really bringing the mobile companies. Well, I'm not going to deny it did, but let's face it, they've done a hell of a better job than the United States have ever done on any form of telecommunications infrastructure.
True enough.
We have mobile roaming and mobile data charges are going to be abolished in 2017. That it could have been quicker, but at least it's happening. And mobile networks like 3, I've seen the writing on the wall, and I've actually preempted that move. Like, I'm going to go to Barcelona. I haven't had to worry about data over the next month, even though I've taken a transatlantic flight and I'm taking a European flight. I do not have to worry about my minutes or my data because 3 have taken care of that for me, and I love them for it.
That's nice. Movistar is still screwing me. I got a nasty bill the other day after I came back from the US.
From Monktober.
Yeah. Not impressed. Well, I was there for a couple of events. I was there for Monktoberfest, and I was there for the SAP for Utilities event as well.
That's right. Yes.
So yeah, I got a nasty bill. It's not good. So yeah, that's a transatlantic issue, and Movistar. Yeah, they just don't help out on transatlantic. They're not too bad on European, but transatlantic, you're just screwed. Well, I mean, that was despite having my Karma device.
Yeah.
At some point, I must have dropped off and sucked down some data.
Oh yeah, no, that's nasty. I actually, to be fair, like in Vegas, there's so much Wi-Fi. But I actually turned my mobile data off. It didn't really bother me because the data speeds are actually low and are actually so low that it's really only good for Twitter and for email.
Yeah.
So it is
I
where
generally have it turned off as well. I don't know what happened, but at
yeah.
some point I sucked down a ton of data, and
Oh shit.
I'm going to be paying for that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's like that's not good. Not good. Anyway, we'll move on.
We will. So, Google brought out their On Hub, their
Yes.
router, about 4 or 5 weeks ago, not that long ago, and we covered it on the show.
Yeah.
But now they're bringing out a second one, manufactured by Asus. And there's not a huge amount of difference between this one and their one, except it has a wave feature built into it where you can wave it and tell it to go, beam in any particular direction, that kind of thing. I think it's more gimmick than anything else.
Yeah.
I'm a little. I gotta say, I like the idea. I do. I like the idea of this router. Because it comes with a nice phone app, a smartphone app, which allows you to control it quite well.
Yes.
I'm not enamored of the fact that it's Google's and that I'm doing all my browsing through their hub, through their router. That leaves me uncomfortable. If other router manufacturers would have a similar smartphone app for managing the router, I would be delighted. I would be absolutely delighted because managing a router isn't something you need to do very often, but having to go in through the 192.168.1.1 web interface and it's username and password and all this kind of bull. And I have multiple routers around the house here, and I do those kinds of things reasonably often, and I've got a good networking background, so I know TCP/IP pretty well, and I can set up little subdomains and things like that on it. That's reasonably straightforward. But I know that I can do that. But for people who are not familiar with that kind of stuff, even just typing in the 192.168.1.1 or whatever the IP address is of your router, that can be daunting enough in its own right. Having a smartphone app which allows you to control it. I mean, I want to be able to do things like, shout to the kids that it's time for dinner. And when they don't appear, I want to be able to just turn off Wi-Fi for their devices.
Yes. Absolutely.
And that'll bring them running very quickly.
Exactly.
And
it's a bit like it's a bit like in the Big Bang Theory. Sheldon keeps changing the Wi-Fi password to what do you call her? Penny, get your own Wi-Fi, or Penny, stop bleaching our Wi-Fi. But no spaces and all lowercase. No, I like my brother-in-law has done some phenomenal work with his router setup with OpenDNS. With router time zones, so he can actually have he has a whitelist of devices that can access all the time, and then all the other devices are on a schedule. So he can actually turn the Wi-Fi off at 8 o'clock at night, so that the kids can't get online and stuff like that there, which is phenomenal. Nice. So, and the thing about it is, like my brother-in-law, he is quite a technical person, but he does not work in the technology area. Oh. So he is, and he can set this stuff up. So it is within reach of people, and I'm gonna be picking his brain so he can do it for me.
I've done things like that. I've reflashed routers in the past and put open source software on them, and it's good. It's nice. It's good fun. The only thing about it is it's harder to do that with more up-to-date routers because most of the open source software for the routers to flash the routers is necessarily older.
Yeah,
it doesn't keep up with the refresh cycle of the hardware. And if you have a more modern router with the faster speeds on it, it's harder to get the open source software to run on it.
Yeah.
But you just got to be patient, I guess. And it's we're not cycling through routers very fast anyway, typically.
Yeah, no.
So we'll move on. We're still with Google though, because Google have announced this week that they're using AI in their search engine. They're using this thing called RankBrain as part of their search algorithm. And what's interesting about this is that they've started using it recently. In the last few months, they've started using it, and it's one of 200 different signals, they call them, that determine where results show up in the search. So as part of their search algorithm, they have 200 different things that they consider. RankBrain is a newly introduced signal to their algorithm, as I say, one of 200, but it has very quickly come into third place. It is now the third most important signal in their 200 signals in their algorithm. And what it does is, it because it's AI, it reads the query. If you put in a kind of a text query, it reads the query and kind of makes more sense of it. So it's a way for Google to make more sense of text-based queries that we put into our searches and give better results as a result.
Fabulous.
That was poorly worded. Sorry about that.
No worries.
It's fascinating that they're starting to use AI in this, and search is where they make all their money. And they've used AI to make search, as in, this is where they make their bread and butter. This is the most important thing that Google do, search. And this has now become, in a very small space of time, the third most important signal for the most important thing they do.
Yeah. Well, it's Kurzweil is there, isn't he? Ray Kurzweil. He is in Google Labs. So it doesn't surprise me the advances that they've actually made. They got, that guy, his specialty is AI, and he's absolutely right at the forefront of it, and has been for decades. So it doesn't surprise me what they've done. I'm impressed at how far it's come in such a short space of time. Yeah.
No, it's phenomenal, and between that and the likes of Watson, and we saw this week. I haven't it up here, but IBM bought was it the Weather Channel, one of those weather organizations anyway, for Watson. So suddenly they can become the world's most accurate weather forecaster would be the aim, I'm guessing. So I mean, AI is going to start cropping up in all kinds of places, and it's a brave new world we're going to be living in.
It certainly is. It certainly is. Tom, I am going to have to run. As I said, I actually I need to get a taxi ordered and get myself to the airport. So I know we only got 3 stories, but I've actually overrun my time. So
no worries.
No worries. Listen, guys, thank you very much. Tom, thank you very much for having me with some great stories this week.
No problem. Thank you, Chris. And as you say, we've only 3 short stories left anyway, so I'll rush them out the door just as soon as you jump off.
No worries. Guys, thank you very much. Have a great weekend.
Cheers,
see you
Chris.
soon.
Have a good one. So 3 more stories, as I said. The first one is this one. Tor are the people who have rolled out the Onion router network, and it's a way of browsing anonymously. You get a Tor browser, and it's what's termed the dark web. So it's a way of browsing the dark web and the normal web anonymously. If you I mean, they say that the NSA have found a way of breaking it, but we don't know, and anyway, I'm not too concerned about that. But what's interesting here is that the Tor organization have brought out a messenger application, which for now supports transport networks like Jabber, IRC, Google Talk, Facebook Chat, Twitter, Yahoo, and others, and enables off-the-record messaging, which is a huge step forward. automatically, and has easy to use graphical user interface, and it's localized into multiple languages. So it's this is, I mean, they've got Linux 32, 64-bit, Windows, and OS X versions of it. So covering most of the platforms there. You've got instructions on how to do it. You've got links to the downloads, all very good. I downloaded it this morning and tried it out on OS X. And it downloaded perfectly. It seemed to work quite well. The issue I had with it, though, is it doesn't manage two-factor authentication yet. Anyway, so I have two-factor authentication turned on Facebook and on Google, and it fell over. It couldn't handle either of those. So that's a pity, but it is a beta, and I'm sure that you know, the lack of two-factor authentication will be fixed pretty soon. This is something that is going to be, you know, very useful to NGOs, to activists, to a lot of people who just, you know, don't need heavy-handed governments. You know, the likes of Turkish activists looking for more democracy or a secular state, people in, you know, Middle Eastern or Southeast Asian countries or South American countries, or even here in Spain now, where, you know, there's a lot more, I don't want to say surveillance, but, you know, the country is becoming a lot more interested in what its citizens are doing, and not necessarily for the right reasons. So this is, you know, a huge step forward. It still needs a bit of work, but, you know, it's great to see it happening. This is a very quick story. If you have an Apple laptop with an SD card, you can buy this little card to stick into it. It's an SD type card. It goes into the slot. You can see it there on the left of this photograph. It's called a tar disk. And what it does is it joins onto your SSD drive and increases the amount of space. So in this case, you have a 256 gig internal SSD drive, and it doubles that to 512 by adding in a 256 gig SD type card, and it appears as a single drive. The advantage of it is it appears as a single drive. It manages to put files on itself that are less frequently accessed. What it means, though, is once you put it in, you can't take it out because it becomes part of the operating system. And therefore, you no longer can use the SD drive for anything else. But what you can do is, if you need to use an SD drive, get an external SD card reader and use that instead. And they're pretty cheap to pick up. So the costs of it are listed somewhere in the article as well. So the 128 gig version will sell for 149, and the larger 256 comes in at just shy of 400. And the point they make here is, if you're in the position of purchasing a laptop, then it would be cheaper to get a 256 direct from Apple. But if you're boosting an existing machine, then this might be a good way to go. The last story is about Raspberry Pi, and they're now offering custom-made, mass-produced boards. So if you're buying 3,000 Raspberry Pis or more, if you want to roll out a new drone, for example, based on Raspberry Pi, and you want to sell more than 3,000 of them, but you don't want to have an Ethernet cable on your drone, or you only want 2 instead of 4 USB, you can contact Raspberry Pi and say, you know, make this for me, and they will. So it's a nice little bit of customization that Raspberry Pi are now building into their Raspberry Pi boards, as long as you're buying more than 3,000 of them. But it's sure to be taken up by some people, and it's sure to help Raspberry Pi with their sales. Okay, that's it. That was the last story. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your attention, as always. And we should be back next week, same bat time, same bat channel. See you then. Thank you.